And you'll also get to hear great contributors like Mike Laval, who joins us now, covering Tennessee for Last Word on College Football. Mike, it's been a tumultuous offseason for Tennessee, but putting together a top 20 class despite it all has to be a win for you. Thinking as far as like the program moving forward and how successful they're going to be heading into the Jeremy Pruitt era. So a top 20 ranked class despite turmoil really throughout the entire offseason so far, with, of course, the coaching search, still being able to land Jeremy Pruitt, formerly of Alabama, as a defensive coordinator. Had to feel like a pretty good hire, despite everything that went on throughout the process. To still land a guy like Jeremy Pruitt and put together a top 20 class has to put a pretty good taste in your mouth here coming out of National Signing Day.
Yeah, obviously the coaching search was a very much of a sour taste in the mouth of a lot of Tennessee fans. But Tennessee fans were actually a little bit disappointed today. Top 20 class, but Tennessee thought they were going to close much stronger. A couple flips on Tennessee today. Anthony Grant went to Florida State, and Jordan Young went to Florida State as well. Jordan Young was a guy that they found as a 2-star in Georgia. Really liked him. And then he kept climbing the charts over the last few weeks, ended up as a 4-star, and then today flipped from Tennessee, who was his first offer, a first major P5 offer, and then went to Florida State. So Tennessee fans are a little bit disappointed. With the Pruitt hire, you hear about all the relationships he's built with 5-star and 4-star players. They're recruiting for Alabama under Nick Saban, the master of recruiting in today's college football. So Tennessee fans thought he was going to be able to bring a couple big names to Knoxville, particularly Quay Walker and Jacob Copeland were two guys that Tennessee fans had zeroed in on, hoping that Pruitt would bring. Turns out he wasn't able to bring any of those guys to Tennessee. We did get J.J. Peterson. He stayed with his commitment from the Army All-American Bowl. And then we lost out on 2 cornerbacks from the West Coast, Isaac Taylor, 2 cornerbacks, one from the West Coast, Elijah Griffin, and then Isaac Taylor Stewart. So Tennessee fans are a little bit disappointed tonight as we close National Signing Day. There's a lot of reasons why it turned out this way. There's a lot of possibilities of why it turned out this way. But top 20 class coming off a 4-8 season, worst season in the history of the program, with a coach who the fan base is excited about, kind of 180 degrees from the previous coaching staff. Late start, the whole 9 yards. We can talk about the reasons why that is. But Tennessee fans are actually a little bit disappointed with the way National Signing Day finished up.
That's completely understandable, and I think a majority of factors play into that. Of course, coming off of the worst season in school history and then having the turmoil with the coaching search, but still putting together a top 20 class despite it all and despite the defections that you mentioned and some guys that a lot of Tennessee fans were expecting to close strong with, but weren't able to ultimately seal the deal with. If there's one position in this signing class, Mike, that you think Tennessee most benefits from, what would that be?
I think defensive line, if you look at some of the guys that they got, you look at Greg Emerson out of Jackson, Tennessee. They signed Emmett Gooden today, one of the top JUCO prospects. Like I said, Greg Emerson, Jordan Allen, another JUCO prospect, City College of San Francisco. And then Brent Lawless out of Nashville. Those are 4 big guys who can make a difference on the defensive line there at Tennessee. We're going to be 2 years removed from Derek Barnett next year, and of course Khalil McKenzie leaving early to the NFL draft. We've been hit hard, or Tennessee's been hit hard by the injury bug there at defensive line with Kyle Phillips and Shai Tuttle as well. So those 4 guys are going to be able to come in. All 4 of those guys will probably be able to compete for some playing time at some point. Of course, Jeremy Pruitt comes from the Alabama tree there, so he's going to look for great athletes up front, some big guys in the middle, and then he's going to look for a rotation to keep those guys fresh. So I think no surprise with Pruitt that your defense is going to have the most success in year one, particularly with the short amount of time he had. The offense, we got 1 or 2 quality players, but not a lot of movement forward there. Defensive front 7 is really the strength of this recruiting class. Surprisingly, however, the dearth of cornerbacks that Pruitt was able to bring in like I mentioned earlier, missed on the 2 biggest targets, Isaac Taylor Stewart and Elijah Griffin out of California.
One guy you mentioned earlier, Mike, is Anthony Grant, the running back who ultimately committed to Florida State, 3-star running back, 5'11", out of Buford, Georgia. The reason I bring him up is because I graduated from Virginia Tech, and I know Virginia Tech was in the mix there as well. But Virginia Tech fans, I think most of them when I reading the recruiting analysts as well, I think most expected it to be down between Tennessee and Florida State. From a Tennessee fan's perspective and somebody who covers the program, how confident were you in getting Anthony Grant? And then when he ultimately decided to go to Florida State this morning, was it a huge sense of surprise among the Tennessee faithful, or was this a guy that was kind of 50-50 on the fence?
Now, he's been 50-50 on the fence. He's an early commit to Tennessee, but wasn't very vocal. So those are always guys that you look for. None of the guys that we were looking to close with, there was a lot of confidence across the board, to be honest with you. Tennessee fans really came in today not knowing what to expect. It was high drama in Knoxville. So there wasn't a lot of confidence. There is depth at running back at Tennessee, not a lot of depth of experience at running back. But with John Kelly leaving early, going to the NFL, Anthony Grant kind of fits that mold of what John Kelly provided, the tough, hard-nosed inside running. Tyson Chandler, Tyson Chandler has some speed and he's got some size, but he runs upright, a little bit like Eddie George. He just doesn't have that Eddie George, Jalen Hurd frame. So Tennessee would like to keep him off tackle. Carlin Fields, to me, is also a speed guy, but not built for the inside running game. So Anthony Grant was a guy they were looking for to really backfill that role of John Kelly as he moves to the NFL. But he was one of 3 previous Tennessee commits that went to Florida State with Willie Taggart's hiring there in Tallahassee.
Mike, you mentioned the recruiting class not necessarily being closing the way that a lot of Tennessee fans would like, but still having a top 20 class at the end of the day, despite everything that happened. I think many will still take it. But do you think that coming off of an 0-8 season in conference play, coming off one of the worst seasons in school history, or the worst season in school history with a 4-8 record, with the SEC East looking the way it is moving forward, Georgia obviously coming off of a national championship appearance, I think Florida is definitely going to get better. A team like South Carolina is definitely getting better as well. What's the overall outlook with the program now with Jeremy Pruitt at the helm and the signing class that you all just put together?
Well, people are optimistic. Jeremy Pruitt, if anything, represents a new philosophy, a new voice. He's kind of, like I said earlier, he's kind of the antithesis of Butch Jones. He's not the marketer. He's not the salesman. He's kind of like the blue collar, down to earth guy. I think he relates to the fan base a little bit more. So there is cautious optimism. But hey, Tennessee fans are smart football fans. You cannot deny that, and they see exactly what you mentioned. They see Georgia coming off a dominant season in the SEC East and a great recruiting class, one of the best ever. They see Florida and Dan Mullen getting better. Took Jacob Copeland away from us. South Carolina is getting better. I think they're going to end up with a top 20 recruiting class as well. The bottom line is Missouri, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt all beat Tennessee last year. So at the end of the day, Tennessee fans know that they've got to climb back up from the bottom. Right where we were at the end of the Dooley era, we find ourselves right back there in the basement of the SEC East, and that's just not a place where Tennessee fans are accustomed to being. A top 10 all-time win program in history, top 10 in almost every statistical category, and now 2 or 3 times in the past 8 years, we found ourselves in the bottom of the SEC East. Not a place that Tennessee fans are comfortable with, not a place they're familiar with, but they understand that it's going to be another long haul in the rebuilding process to get back to competing for division championships and conference championships. I think the patience with Pruitt will last at least one season. He kind of has a free ticket this year. Next year's 1 year from today, the early signing period and National Signing Day will really kind of seal the deal for Tennessee fans on how they see Pruitt. He's got about 11 months. 10 months before early enrollment. Or early signing day next year, and then 12 months having one full season on the field, and then 2 recruiting classes, 1 full recruiting class. He has that's his leeway period right there.
Hey guys, if you don't mind me cutting in, I don't know if Mike McDaniel's hearing the same thing, but we're starting to get a pretty bad pop on your mic. Are you hearing that as well, Mike?
Yeah, just a little bit towards the end there.
If you can, as I ask this next question, Mike, if you can possibly address that. If at all possible. We've had this conversation, Mike, many times. Tennessee Mike and Mike McDaniel and I were kicking this around just a few minutes ago in regards to where the players are. So 40% over the last 5 to 6 years, and this hasn't changed for quite some time, 40% of the top recruits, the top 300 to 400 coming from California, Texas, and Florida. Then you've got your Georgia just exploding onto the scene and challenging those three states. Not quite there, but challenging. And then you've got Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Alabama. And I see the numbers there. They're kind of in that next tier. So kind of outline for us the state of Tennessee high school football and what the future is.
Yeah, I think, like you said, we've talked about this before. The state of Tennessee high school football is getting better. And like you said, probably second tier. Middle Tennessee has produced some big names over the past couple of years. Of course, the Tate brothers, Golden Tate, was kind of some of the first big ones from there. Jalen Hurd, Joshua Malone, playing for Cincinnati now. A lot of big recruits out of the Nashville, Murfreesboro area. So that's Middle Tennessee. And then last year, a lot of big talent coming out of Knoxville. You had MarkRogers and T. Higgins, and then the offensive tackle that went to Georgia, Caden Mays. All three of those guys were top 30 national picks right there in Knoxville. Of course, Tennessee fans fully realized that Tennessee wasn't able to get any of those 3 5-stars from the previous 2 seasons. So that hurts. And of course, Memphis has always had talent. Tennessee hasn't always recruited well in Memphis because Memphis is much more of a basketball town, kind of AAU, and it's very close to Ole Miss. So the recruiting battle over Drew Richmond 2-3 seasons ago with Ole Miss and Hugh Freeze was a big win for Butch Jones. You look at Pruitt today, and you got to think that Butch Jones was did not leave on a good note in Knoxville, but you can't deny his ability to recruit. The guy could definitely recruit. But so that's kind of the state of Tennessee football. Memphis has always had great athletes. Nashville, Murfreesboro, that area is getting up to the high end of the second tier in the nation. A lot of quality players coming out of there. And then East Tennessee, the Knoxville area, like I said, 3 5-stars, and there's only in the 247 composite 32 5-stars a year. So 3 of the last 64 5-stars from 247 have been in the Knoxville scene, Knox Catholic and Oak Ridge.
So, Mike, being on that tier, I'm going to relate it to some recent numbers that I've seen. I was looking at the Ohio list of players, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and if you go to Florida, you go to California, you go to Texas, you're going to see 45 to 65 4-stars. You're going to see in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, you're going to see 10 or 12 to 15 4-stars. So I'm thinking if Jeremy Pruitt, if he's able to get 10 of the top 15, 12 or 13 of the top 20 players in the state, obviously you would like to get most of those top 5 or top 6. Would that be a decent goal to build the foundation of this program?
Yeah, absolutely. Tennessee has 11 4-stars in this class. It would absolutely be a big thing. For me, I always like for the head coach at the University of Tennessee to get 5 of the top 10 players in the state of Tennessee. To me, that's owning the state. If you can get half of the top 10, that's owning the state. And then for the head coach at the University of Tennessee, he's got to be able to recruit in Atlanta and Central Georgia. He's got to get 4, 5, 6 guys from there. You think that the Berry brothers have, Tennessee's historically recruited very well in Atlanta. And then you got to be able to go into Texas and get 1 or 2 guys. You got to be able to go into Florida and get 1 or 2 guys. You got to be able to do that because those are SEC markets. So you have to be able to take advantage of the fact that you play in Florida every other year and you play in Texas A&M every few years. So you have to be able to recruit in your conference area secondly. And then you have to show the ability to go across the nation. And for Tennessee, that means reaching into Virginia every now and then, where Mike's from. You got to go out to California and get some of that talent. And if there's a guy that's nowhere close to a big school and he's a great talent, you've got to be able to go in with those other big schools. And you have to have a national brand and go in there and get that. So for me, what I like to see from the University of Tennessee is 5 out of the 10 from the state of Tennessee, get a couple out of Atlanta, a couple 4-stars out of Atlanta, be able to go and get 1 or 2 guys from Florida, 1 or 2 guys from Texas, 1 or 2 guys from California, and then address your needs with other guys elsewhere. So, I look at the in-state, in-conference, and then the national brand. That's kind of the 3 categories I expect from the head coach at the University of Tennessee.
That's certainly an advantage of hiring a guy like Jeremy Pruitt, who is, of course, familiar with recruiting at Alabama, of course, one of the top teams in the SEC year in and year out. Mike, thanks so much once again for joining us. Please plug your site, Last Word on College Football, for us.
Yeah, please check me out, lastwordoncollegefootball.com. We kind of build bill ourselves as the place where the smart readers go. You're not going to find a lot of the first take and high drama. There's not going to be any screaming or yelling in our articles. We kind of take the analytical approach and kind of get that next level down for the informed reader. We got a couple of writers from our side. They'll be here tonight. Tony Syracuse will join you later. Talk about UCLA, which had a huge haul today. So go check the team out at lastwordoncollegefootball.com. And we're proud partners and supporters of Mark Rogers TV, and appreciate you guys having us on.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mark. Appreciate having you on tonight. Mike, I'm sorry. I said Mark. Unbelievable. Thanks, Mike. Sorry. So that's Mike Laval covering Tennessee for Last Word on College Football. Of course, he's a proud supporter of Mark Rogers TV. They get a bunch of writers from Last Word on College Football on here every week covering the college football landscape. So we thank Mike for joining us here tonight.